Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show, while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, today, the eyes of the nation were transfixed upon the nation's capital there at Washington, D.C., because a week after former Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, Director James Comey gave his testimony in front of the Senate's Intelligence Committee, and yes, I do know that that sounds a bit like an oxymoron, but after his testimony before the Intelligence Committee, it brought up some questions with respect to Sitting Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you are all aware, very early on in the tenure of this 45th presidential administration of these United States of America, Attorney General Sessions decided that it was necessary and proper for him to recuse himself from any and all investigations involving this topic, this thing that the president himself has described as a cloud hanging over his tenure in office thus far, that of the alleged collusion with Russia and members of his campaign. And as we all recall, one of the things that Trump had done is he went in front of the cameras of the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media to proclaim that Comey had stated in a letter to him on multiple different occasions, or actually he stated that rather in the letter of termination of Comey, that the president himself was not personally under investigation. And Jeremy, one of the things that has always bugged me a little bit about that is how it has been stated before, going back to the time of Harry S. Truman, that that placard that sat on the desk stated in no uncertain terms that the buck stops here. And one of the things that you and I have discussed oft times on previous episodes of our state-of-the-art radio program is that there is this unwillingness in the modern arena of American politics to be accountable. This is something that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists have been pushing for generation after successive generation now, and it shows no signs of improving within the foreseeable future. It seems that both sides of the political aisle are hell-bent on continuing a narrative of pointing the finger at someone else. Of course, whenever you do point the accusatory finger at someone, there are always at least three fingers pointing right back at you. That's the problem that is not being discussed. And it is a problem because I'm not seeing a solution for it. Because for a solution to be there, the politicians have to be ready, willing, and able to accept it. And unfortunately, they are the ones that have been propagating this sort of nonsense. And we will be getting into more depth and detail with respect to some of the troubling aspects of what Sessions said. But before we do, I do need to stress that so far, there has not been any direct evidence of collusion between the major components of the Trump regime or the Trump campaign and Russia. But the fact of the matter is, there is so much circumstantial evidence here that it begins to sort of form a jigsaw puzzle where the pieces are starting to fall into place and we are beginning to get a bigger picture of exactly what is unfurling there in that swamp of Washington, D.C., and it is an ugly picture.
Numerous times we've brought up various different connections between Trump and the Russians. Now, he said, well, I've had no dealings with these, individuals or this, and I think he meant that as a blanket statement pertaining to his actual campaign. And that seems to be what's going on here with the whole issue with Comey, with Jeff Sessions pre-written testimony, in front of the Senate hearing committee, and Trump's statements, and basically, saying, well, there's no connection with us. I've never had dealings with them. It seems to be a blanketed thing that purposefully invokes speculation. We know speculation doesn't hold up in a court of law. Speculation doesn't hold up much to anything except in the stock markets, and that's why they're always crazy up and down, because it's all speculative, based on people's feelings, their gut feelings on this. We need something that is concrete. We need undeniable proof. And I think that's eventually going to come out, Randy, after hearing. Well, I guess it will actually depend on how they proceed forward after Sessions' testimony today. But we've drawn connections between Trump and different Russian individuals with his real estate deals, the connection with the 2013 Miss Universe pageant that was actually held in Moscow. Arif, what's his name, and all these other different individuals, the Bayrock Corporation, all of that stuff. Now, it would be somewhat justifiable speculation to say, look, if he's done real estate transactions with these individuals, business dealings, why wouldn't they have any involvement in his campaign? So, logic. I mean, that's logically how people look at things on the face of everything. But again, we need concrete evidence. Now, we're not defending Trump in this situation, but we're going to call, like we see it. We're going to say, give credit where credit is due. Is there absolute concrete evidence that he's been colluding with these individuals? Not yet. Keyword being yet. But I think all that will actually come out later on.
Well, and one of the things that we have to keep in mind is I don't think that Trump was really trying to collude with the Russians. I think the left is trying to make a lot more hay out of this, but I do think that he wanted the business interactions there. It was a new market for him. And the problem with him is he continues to be his own worst enemy. And I think that's one of the things that we had warned about over the course of the past approximate 2 years. It's just that there has been this way that Trump goes about discussing things that makes it so easy to misconstrue what he's saying, because half the time it's impossible to tell exactly what side he's taking on something. But
Coffee.
yeah, Kafifi. But what it really comes down to with me, with all of this, is why not just get all the evidence on the table, get it over with? Because as Trump himself has admitted, this has been a cloud on his administration. It has impeded the legislative agenda of the gutless opposition party, or GOP. And of course, the Democrats are going to try and run whatever they can here. The Democrats are practically Russian agents themselves. I mean, they are communists. That certainly seems to be the political persuasion of theirs that they've embraced for well over a half century now. John A. Stormer pointed out how Chris Dodd's father had helped Mao Zedong get the proper ammunition for his weapons during World War II, while they purposefully obfuscated with respect to Chiang Kai-shek because they didn't like Chiang Kai-shek because he wasn't communist. Alger Hiss, all of those guys. Yes, there is proof that the Democrat Party, going all the way back to FDR's time, really did have an affinity for communists. But this is something that is well known. The problem that I'm having with respect to Sessions' testimony today was the way that he went forth and tried to claim a sort of privilege that really didn't exist. And to really go into it, there's this Business Insider article that really had it hammered out, because there's no way I could recall everything that was said during the testimony. But It said that privileges of communications within the Department of Justice is what Sessions had cited,
Mhm.
that prevented him from divulging information, though he denied he was invoking executive privilege. And he stated it's longstanding policy for the Department of Justice not to comment on conversations that the Attorney General has had with the President of the United States for confidential reasons that really are founded in the co equal branch powers of the Constitution of the US. All right, just as a reminder here, the way that the Constitution works, the way that the upper echelons of the federal government works by design is that it is limited in its scope and power. In order for the federal government, and that means the three separate branches that are founded in Article 1 for the legislature, Article 2 for the executive, and Article 3 for the judiciary, they have to trace their governing authority back to a power that is specifically enumerated unto them by the Constitution. Now, the separations of power is certainly one thing. However, when the Congress is having these sorts of sessions, and that doesn't matter whether it's the House of Representatives or the Senate, but more importantly with the Senate, they have the power of a court.
Mhm.
That's something that's not really discussed very often. But remember that with Eric Holder, the gun smuggling man himself, with Operation Fast and Furious,
Yeah.
was held in contempt. This contempt power is virtually the same as the power of contempt that you will find in your lower courts. And the reason for that is your impeachment trials are held within Congress. And the only reason I bring that up, because I'm not saying necessarily that Trump's going to be impeached. That's a laughable thing out of the left's worst nightmares for this country. But I bring that up because I want to show just how important it is that if he's going to cite a privilege, that it has to be one that is specific in its nature and applicability. And unfortunately, that is not what I was getting from the statements that Sessions made there and the claim that he made there.
Well, here's the thing. The closest that he could get to that would be Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1. And for those who
Hmm.
don't know it, I'm going to read it. It says the president shall be commander in chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States. He may require the opinion in writing of the principal officer in each of the executive departments upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices. And he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States except for in cases of impeachment. Here's the thing. When Sessions made that comment that he can't talk about classified information because the executive privilege hasn't been granted, he doesn't have the authority to grant the executive privilege, but he has the authority under the excerpts or the concepts of the Constitution. Mr. Attorney General, where in here does it grant you the authority to do that? You say you get it from here, but where? Because the way I understand it, and the way anybody else with a fifth grade syntax of understanding proper English, you can't really have verbal conversations and then claim they're to be classified because Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1 says specifically opinions in writing. In writing. So if it was in writing and there was notes taken, it was tabulated, dictated, whatever the case is, then it would be deemed classified. But it was never deemed classified because that would take an act of Congress, would it not? I think it would, to classify such information. So how is it that you can claim such authority and not fulfill your obligation under oath to divulge the information or answer the questions that you've been asked? I think that would be obstruction, wouldn't it, Randy?
I believe so.
Hmm.
Um, I want to mention something that Aaron had brought up,
Okay.
and
Welcome, Aaron.
I'm going to uh, really tie into this what he's saying. He says, first of all, Russia has come a long way since the Cold War and a nuclear plant that blew up. Aaron, I believe you're mentioning Chernobyl.
Hmm.
Um, and the only evidence is 16 intel agencies that were run by Obama people. And remember that the FBI had never seen the server that was supposed to be hacked and run by Obama appointee Comey. As I recall, Jeremy, you might want to check this for me. I don't remember if Comey was always just a Obama one. I know for the FBI director, but I don't know about his other positions. I'm just curious on the history of that.
I'm going to pull it up
And
here real quick.
yeah, and then he said the company that looked into the server pulled back their claims that it was hacked. True. Um, and then Obama claimed separation of powers more than once. Yes, but here's the connotation that we're discussing separation of powers. Obama claimed it when he was trying to use executive fiat to run the country. Obama claimed it in a way as to solidify the power and control of the executive branch. And that is absolutely Congress's fault for not standing up for their authority. If you look at Article 1, the reason that Article 1 is the most lengthy of the articles in the Constitution, it's because the founding fathers put the most impetus on it. They saw it as the most important. Remember, the first government was Continental Congress.
You know, it,
But over the course of generations, Congress has been ceding away more and more and more of its authority to these nameless, faceless, and ultimately unaccountable governmental hacks and bureaucrats like Comey. Not just Comey, it's all over. This was part of what Theodore Roosevelt, the father of the American progressive movement, was attempting to establish with that leviathan of an administrative state. So, this is what they were pushing for. This kind of system was designed to take power, influence, and control away from the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. In Sessions's case, I think he would have just been better to have stated along the lines of, I don't have a recollection of the actual content of what was said, therefore let me come back to you with a memo or something down the lines of that. I understand the desire of wanting to protect executive privilege, but Trump's own spokesperson came out today and said that the privilege hadn't even been discussed with Sessions. And so it's a bit of a precarious position because of the type of optics. You have to realize that the salivating mainstream media is going to attempt to paint this off as some sort of Watergate type scandal. They're going to sit there and try and run the lines of obfuscating the truth and claiming that it's obstruction. Do I think that Sessions had the intent of obstructing? No. But do I think that that narrative can be spun and can be made to stick? Possibly. Again, we shouldn't be a party that sits there and just gives ammunition to the left.
well,
We should govern by the principles of the Constitution.
I have information on Comey here. This is from Britannica.com. It says, let's see, came from an Irish American family. Paternal grandfather was a police officer. Yeah. Comey grew up in Allendale, New Jersey. Later studied chemistry and religion at College of William and Mary. Graduated in '82. Earned a law degree in '85 from University of Chicago. As a young lawyer, Comey worked mostly in offices of the United States attorneys, federal prosecuting attorneys, regional jurisdiction. In '87, he became assistant U.S. attorney of New York, serving under Rudy Giuliani. 93, he moved to Virginia and became partner in McGuire Woods law firm. Became an assistant U.S. Attorney General, Eastern District of Virginia. 2002, he was promoted to U.S. Attorney and put in charge of his old jurisdiction, where he dealt with a high-profile case against Martha Stewart, financial misconduct. So he headed up that. 2003, he became Deputy Attorney General, second highest official in the Department of Justice, serving as acting Attorney General in 2004 during the incapacity of Attorney General John Ashcroft. So he was actually in the DOJ under George W. Bush.
Yeah. And I think even Sessions today said that he's had about 20 years in.
Yeah.
With
he dealt with the domestic eavesdropping program. That was
he and Mueller were about to walk out on that one, saying it violated the Constitution.
Yep. Let's see what else he did. 2005, General Counsel of Lockheed Martin. 2013, Obama officially nominated him to head of FBI, replacing Robert Mueller. Comey was confirmed by the Senate. 2013 included the agency's investigation of Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server. July 2016. Went on and on and on. But it's funny that this article actually goes on and mentions that after Trump was sworn in, he reportedly asked Comey to continue as FBI director. And in March, Trump accused Obama of wiretapping during the presidential race, but Comey dismissed the allegations. So I'm just wondering if that had something to do with Comey's firing. I don't know. I mean, again, that is speculative. That's speculation. Could it be? Possibly, but we don't have any substantiated proof on that. But that is pretty much his background in a nutshell. He was actually in there during the, second Bush administration. So,
and of course, Bush was basically a Democrat light too.
Yeah.
And it's Aaron, you're right. Rudy Giuliani gave him fame. But I want to talk about kind of the quorum, the conduct that was going on within the Senate committee hearing. I know we had that fool, Winkle or Wankle or Wanker.
Franken?
No, it wasn't Franken. No. It was Weiner or something like that.
Or something.
Who just went out and attacked the personal honor of the Attorney General. Look, you can have the political disagreements with him. You can sit there and think he has something to hide. That's certainly the optics that were given by it. But to go out and besmirch him like that and try and have the last word, that's another tactic that the frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftist controlled Democrat Party always attempts to do. And that is to run their time down to try and prevent the witness from having the ability to rebut their claims. And I think one of the interesting things also that came out of this was that in some ways Sessions did corroborate some of the claims that Comey had made in front of the, again, this is an oxymoron, Senate Intelligence Committee on last week or during last week. But do I think that it comes out to being some impeachable offense as the left is trying to? No, certainly not. Not yet anyway. Now, could it be spun that way? Could it go a Watergate way? It's possible. But my thoughts here are, we've got grandstanding going on with either side of the political aisle. We have attempts of claiming a constitutional privilege where it really doesn't apply. And again, what this speaks to is how for far too long now, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, we have essentially been losing that fluent and working knowledge and understanding of our Constitution, and thereby our fundamental and inalienable God given rights. And you see, folks, that's why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, have stated since the airing of our premiere episode of September 11th, 2015, that it is so important that we foster that fluent and working knowledge and understanding. It's so that we can look at this and say, hey, wait a minute. That doesn't work. Now, do I think that the Democrats would be the ones that leaked some of this stuff that came out of the classified closed session? Absolutely.
Sure.
They leak like sieves. And again, I have to reiterate, we don't want this administration to fail. We have been highly critical of it, but we are highly critical of government. The way I view it is, I'm just being that curmudgeon from the founders era, where I look at government as a necessary evil, but I want to make it as little evil as possible. Do I think Hillary Clinton would have been a disaster? Absolutely. I think she would have been a disaster. She's a walking, talking, stumbling. I guess you can't even say she walks, she stumbles. She's a stumbling disaster. And she was horrible. That's why she lost. But
that's not to say that
when
Trump can't be horrible as well.
Sure. And that's the thing. That's the thing. Both political parties are essentially pushing for bigger government. Both of them are trying to create these privileges for themselves while denying it to the average American citizen.
Well, this is how they take
it's
away.
It's really disgusting. It is.
This is how they usurp and take away the authority away from the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. They set themselves up to where they're the ones who have all the privileges. They're the ones who can exercise their rights and privileges while nobody else is allowed to. How many times have we seen individuals who, with taxes? Look at Charlie Rangel, prime example. Charlie Rangel, he could probably get away with murder. But Randy, if you or I decide to, not do our taxes for a number of years, and it amounts into millions of dollars owed, they wouldn't even let it go that far. They would have us locked up and thrown in jail, in prison. So why is it that it's okay for them? And see, this is my beef. Okay. This is the way I look at it, just like you. I want as small of a government as possible. The Constitution is designed, it's set up. That's why there's enumeration of powers. Okay. Article 1 being the most, which means it grants the most authority from we the people to the representatives and the congressmen. Second most authority goes to the president and the executive branch. Third goes to the judicial. That's why Article 1 is much longer than Article 2, and Article 2 much longer than Article 3. It's purposely written that way. So why not allow it to operate that way? It worked, better than it did for the first 135 years. In fact, it actually worked the way it was supposed to for the first 135 years. To work out, but when they worked out those bugs, it was fine. Nothing wrong with it. Then we had individuals like Woodrow Wilson come in with a progressive income tax that actually kind of a harebrained scheme that many would argue trickled all the way back to Lincoln.
Well,
I actually think,
he certainly
the
floated
grandfather of progressivism. Yeah. So, the thing is, take your hands off of stuff that you don't have any authority to put your hands on. That's what it boils down to. You want to talk about a better economy, a better job market, better real estate market. You want people to flourish. You want people to actually have money in their pockets and to be productive citizens. Let's make it laissez-faire. There you go.
Wouldn't that be
hands
nice?
off? It would be great. Be
Yeah.
great. The founding fathers would no longer be scratching at their graves to claw themselves out to come and put foot to rear end, because that's that's the way I'm looking at this. And yes, Hillary Clinton would have been an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. Trump, we don't know what kind of a disaster he's going to be. I don't want to take a chance on the unknown. I would rather deal with what is known that way, because we're prepared for it. And I'm not saying I would have rather have had Hillary over Trump. I didn't want either one of them.
Hmm.
But the thing is, you have to be careful what you vote for or wish for, whatever the case is. You have to be prepared. And the only way to do that is having a working and useful understanding and knowledge of the Constitution. That
Well,
way you can hold them in check, because apparently they don't know how to hold each other accountable or allow themselves to be held accountable.
it's not that they don't know how. It's as you just said there. They don't want to.
Mhm.
And I want to point out something also that Aaron brought up and what Donna brought up. First of all, she said, as a tax-paying American, I want a refund on all of these investigations. Yeah, so do I, because they're not being run as investigations. They're being run as media circuses. That's the problem. The rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are operating in such a way as to grandstand. They are grandstanding. It's, oh, looky at me. Can I get some type of political brownie points out of this? Can I entrap them with goody goody gotcha questions? It's bovine and equine excrement, but it's ridiculous. Then it goes, Aaron went on to say that the cost of military tripled around the time Comey came to power. Yes, a lot of that was technological stuff and maybe even redundant stuff. He then said, this is not the September budget, but the budget coming to the floor now. Again, this is the way that the gutless opposition party likes to run things in. They like to sneak it in last minute. That's why, if you really want to know if you're going to get screwed over, look and see if the government is having closed door sessions in the middle of the night like a thief in the night, because that's what they love to do. They want to do it to a position where we, the people, are essentially not paying attention, are not aware of what's going on. That way, they can avoid the public flack of it. They can avoid all of the scrutiny that would come. And, it's as the great visionary Zygmunt Dobbs mentioned in his magnum opus of Keynes at Harvard back in the 1950s and 60s. He essentially said that the government would operate in such a way, when it's controlled by frothing at the mouth Fabian socialist leftists, and mark my words, folks, they are in both of the two mainstay political parties, they would use every available opportunity to keep it out of the eyes of the American public. That they would utilize overzealous and draconian regulations to make it nigh impossible for the American people to carve out the quality of life and standard of living that they had grown accustomed to, in order to continue to push for this government expansion. And literally what that comes down to, it's Cloward and Piven. Cloward and Piven being that overwhelm a structure that government created in the first place to implement a permanent welfare state, so that the American people feel overwhelmed, so that they crawl to the government on bended knee, asking the government to solve a problem that government created in the first place. And believe it or not, that was actually something that Carly Fiorina had mentioned, that socialism is when the government creates a problem and then comes forth and speciously claims that it is going to fix or resolve the problem for you. Well, the problem or issue with that is that we've reached such a point in our nation's relatively brief yet illustrious history that we aren't coming back from the gradual incremental push to the left. We are unable to regroup because we are facing salvos from within our party and from the usual suspects in the Democrat Party as well. And that comes to play to our great detriment each and every time. And unfortunately, it shows no signs of improving within the foreseeable future. And it's people like John McCain. It's people like Benedict Arnold, Paul Ryan. It's people like even Lindsey Grahamnesty.
Mhm.
They're the ones that don't want there to be accountability. And when
No,
there is
because
no accountability, that is when the government begins to think it has carte blanche to do whatever the hell it wants.
well, they don't want any accountability because it disrupts their luscious lifestyles.
Right.
And that's what it boils down to. It's just like everybody else. It's like that old saying goes, the old joke. First term senator or congressman spends the first year trying to figure out how the hell they got elected. And they spend the rest of their term trying to figure out how the hell to stay elected. That's all that's all it is to them anymore. They want to make a career out of it, and they've again taken something like the word career, bastardized it. It's never intended to be a career. People say, well, we need term limits on U.S. senators and representatives. We have them, folks. It's outlined in the United States Constitution. I believe it's 4 and 6 years?
Yes.
You don't like them. You don't like the way they're doing things. Vote them out of office.
Actually, it's every 2 years.
2 years and 4 years.
Yeah.
So whatever the case is, they don't do what they're supposed to do, what they say they're going to do on the campaign trail to get elected. When it's time for re-election, vote them out. Vote them out. Randy, this is why I don't have any party allegiance anymore. Because the way I look at it is, I don't care what letter is next to anybody's name. If they want to follow the Constitution and they convince me that they're capable of doing it, I'm going to vote for them. Why? Because we need people who are going to do that. But you have to be careful. You have to be able to understand if they're genuine or not. You have to be able to realize that they know what they're talking about. People probably elected Jeff Sessions because, well, he's strong on the Constitution. He's a constitutionalist. He's this, he's that. He hasn't violated the Constitution. When a man has a pre-written, and in that pre-written testimony, he makes the erroneous claim that he has constitutional authority to speak on things because of some sort of privilege that isn't even mentioned in the Constitution, that should be a red flag. And it should bring into question everything that he has ever done in his career. Because they don't look at it, again, as a civic duty, not like our founding fathers did. Thomas Jefferson was reluctant to become president, but he did so because he says, the people have spoken. It is my obligation as a citizen. That is the way it's supposed to be. Randy, both you and I are old enough to be, very least, U.S. representatives. I believe I'm old enough. I'm actually old enough to run for president. You will be here in a few short years.
3 years.
3 years. So, the thing is, and we've joked about this. We really have. But, and honestly, I wouldn't want the position. Not the way that it operates now. If it followed the Constitution, if our government was as limited as the Constitution defined, absolutely, I would love to serve my country in that capacity. But I don't want that kind of false responsibility, because there's too much debauchery going on. I don't want that. I don't need that. I enjoy my freedoms too much. What little freedoms we have left, because those are being eroded away.
Right. And, the other attribute that comes into that is who wants to run the gauntlet of the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, running as much subterfuge as they can, engaging in character assassination as they do, and basically muddying the waters. Because there is no way in hell that anyone with a good conscience can sit there and say that the media is forthright. This reminds me of what that French philosopher Alexis de Tocqueville had said when he was admiring America during her halcyon days. He said that the type of freedom of the press that we have in the United States would never have been tolerated in Europe. First of all, Europe never had the kind of constitutional rights we do. And the other attribute of it is that because in the United States we had been formed with these rights in mind, that we wouldn't react like the Europeans did. We wouldn't, go run and storm Washington, D.C. over what Alex Jones said. I mean, fish people and
Mhm.
what have you. We read between the lines because we know that we have a free press. We know that with that freedom, there couches with it a duty, obligation, but above all, a responsibility. And the responsibility is that we fact check these things, that we look into these things, that we be responsible citizens. Unfortunately, civic duties and obligations have been lost. And it's because of the historical revisionists that have infested our institutions and ivory towers of academia from coast to coast and border to border here in the land of the free and the home of the brave. It's because of this sort of assault on our time honored and well established values, traditions, and institutions. And it's also because of the overzealous regulation. We are busier now attempting to live our lives because the government is intermeddling everywhere. The government has become an all intrusive, all trespassing entity that literally is basically illegitimate, rogue, tyrannical, despotic, but above all, oppressive. And part of the reason for that is we ourselves have not been standing up. But the other part of the reason is that we have seen our leaders just discard the Constitution. How often do you actually see in election cycles these politicians discuss the Constitution, strictly adhering to the Constitution? You don't. You don't. It's not mentioned on either side. And that is disgusting. That is the problem. Whenever we seek to distance and divorce ourselves from the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution, that's when you get these kinds of dog and pony shows. That's when you get this excrement that's out there where the government will sit there and have hearing after hearing after hearing. Whatever happened with Fast and Furious, by the way? Did that ever get resolved?
Nope.
No, it's still ongoing. Now, isn't that funny?
Wasn't Jason Chaffetz part of that investigation? I think he was, and now what was it?
He
Trey
was, and he's
Gowdy?
being chased out by Benedict Arnold, Paul Ryan, and some of
And
the other
and
Graham
I think,
Astasty type
yeah,
ones.
yeah, and I believe Trey Gowdy is now heading that up. What wasn't Daryl Issa heading it up to initially to begin with? So it's just, here's a can. Let's see how far we can kick it down the road. Stop playing kick the can. You're meddling with people's lives here. You're meddling with their first priority of their rights. That's the issue. When we continue to allow them to dictate our rights, how we exercise them, when we exercise them, what's right is what, and what is right now anymore. When you have people, lobbying and pressing the issue of, gay rights, well, here's the thing, okay? Regardless of what anybody believes, here's the facts of the matter. Individuals who practice that alternative lifestyle, as they like to say, the homosexual lifestyle, guess what? Their rights are no different than mine or Randy's or yours. Why? Because all of our rights are equally enumerated in the Constitution. See, this is the problem. People want to say that there's extra constitutional rights. Well, I have the right to do this, or I have the right to be in my safe space. You know what happens when you go into your safe space? You become alone. You start to loathe yourself. You have no self-esteem. Why? Because you allow your emotions to dictate your logic. Guess what? Weak people allow their emotions to dictate their logic. Strong people use their logic to dictate the emotions of the weak. And guess what? All these people that you're lobbying to that are pushing all this legislation so that your emotions can be satisfied, those individuals are the strong people in this equation. They are using their logic to dictate your emotions. Stop letting them do that to you.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. It's just like, we said with the issues and facts. Facts have been replaced with lunacy. And that's what it is. Absolute lunacy. Pretty soon there's going to be some kind of stove timer going off and a little bell's going to ding, 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 and everybody's going to start barking and running towards the sound of the bell. Bunch of good little Pavlovians there. Yay. Stop.
Well, certainly that is what Pavlov's school of journalism for the salivating mainstream media is all about. And Jeremy, the other attribute that this ties into is, why was it that the Republican Party is once again being caught with its pants down? They should have known this sort of thing was going to come up. And I'm going to cast a stone here at Trump. This whole Russian thing could have gone away if he hadn't opened his mouth on Twitter.
Yep.
This unconstrained running out there trying to utilize social media to do a rah-rah shish-kumbah type thing. Stop it. Please. There's a reason that we have protocols in place. And I'm not sitting there trying to be an egghead, stupid bureaucrat or championing a leviathan of an administrative state. What I'm attempting to do here is to get back to what matters to the American people. Why are we not seeing a consolidated effort to rein in this leviathan of an administrative state? Really ought to be pushing for that, because it was the Republican Party that gave birth to it in the first place. Recall that the father of the American progressive movement was Theodore Roosevelt. His cousin was a Democrat, but he wasn't. He was a Republican. And what he pushed for in the opening decade of the 20th century was to further entrench the government, to further expand the scope, breadth, power, influence, and control of the federal government far beyond what our founding fathers ever originally intended for it to be. And recall, one of the things that he had said was, in this modern industrial age in which we live, and he was saying this in 1906, the first speech he had given after his reelection, it makes our Constitution and the whole premise of limited government antiquated. Bovine excrement. It just isn't true. It isn't true because our Constitution is based on those natural law tenets, which by their very nature are immutable, meaning they're just as applicable today as they were at the inception of this nation some 237 plus years ago, as God willing, and with the incessant efforts of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, all of us, it will be some 237 years from today. But again, we have got to hold everyone accountable. I don't care if it's Trump. I don't care if it's Comey. I don't care if it's Diane Frankenstein's monster there. All of these people need to be held to task. Why? Because the whole of this nation is far greater than the mere sum of its parts. But do we even believe in a greater good anymore?
I certainly do.
Oh, I know you do, and I
I
know that
happen
our
to believe.
listeners do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, here's another problem that I have. And again, as you stated earlier, we don't want Trump's administration to fail. We certainly don't. But it's kind of hard to believe that it's not going to fail when at every turn, every single time, there seems to be some kind of moment of clarity and legitimate credibility. He or somebody within his administration opens their mouth or gets their thumbs to tap it on that little phone, taken to Twitter, and removes all credibility. See, there's an old saying that goes, it's better to be perceived as a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Now, you and I, we could think that Trump is rather foolish, I would say. But the more he says the things that he says, it's just making it that much more convincing. I don't ever want to have to look at the leader of our country as being a fool. We shouldn't have to worry about looking at the leader of the free world as being a fool. But unfortunately, we do in most cases because it is that divorcement from our Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just with the president, it's with every elected official, all the way down to the lowest municipality of government. You know, here in my town in Flint, you know, with this whole water crisis thing going on, Aquaflinta, you know, which you know what, Randy, I'm actually thinking about, you know, actually filling up some water bottles with tap water here in Flint, putting it on our Cafe Press account, you know, selling them as novelties, Aquaflinta. Why not?
Well, it could be holy water to take out vampires or cursed water.
Yeah, I mean, hell, it takes on other things, so why not? But the point is, at every single level, why did it even escalate this far? Because the people kept continuing to be complacent. They were taking in things that were being said to them. Things, again, these individuals are strong individuals in positions where they can utilize their logic to dictate the emotions of the weak people. And that's what the government wants. They want to be able to put everybody as a lower class, develop some kind of twisted, archaic caste system to where you have the landed gentry and the government elite taking over everybody. Supreme tyranny. And that is not what our republic is about. And yes, folks, I will never refer to our country as a democracy. It is not a democracy. It is a constitutional representative republic, meaning that the governing authority is given consent to govern the people by the consent of the governed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a democracy, as Benjamin Franklin described it and defined it as two wolves and a lamb fighting over or debating on what's going to be for lunch.
Liberty is a well-armed lamb to contest that vote.
Sure, absolutely. But it has to come to a head. We have to realize, and we've been saying this since the entire duration of our show, that the Constitution is the key. You could take any issue, any problem that may arise, and if you apply the Constitution to it, problem solved. You have the issue of illegal aliens. Very simple. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. You operate with that under Article 4, Section 4, government's responsibility to secure the states and prevent them from invasion, maintain domestic tranquility, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And What do we have with all that? Well, we have the laws regarding immigration. Title 8, U.S. Code, sections 1323 through 1329. It's all right there. Illustrious, well written laws that must be followed. They don't want to follow the laws. That's the problem. They want to have these executive orders or executive decisions to do this or to do that. You can't take standing law, set it aside, and make decrees and dictate how things are going to be done. That makes you a tyrant. Tyranny is not allowed in this country. I don't care what noble cause you may think you're perpetrating with it. It doesn't matter. The law is the law and it must be followed. I don't care who you are, what letter's next to your name, what social prestige you hold, how many tawas you own. It doesn't matter. Follow the law. And unless we, the people, hold them accountable to following the law, they're going to continue to cast it aside and behave like rampant dictators. Enough is enough.
Mhm. It is. It is. And we have to get back to a modicum of sanity in this country. And, as you had mentioned there with the whole, we're not a democracy, this whole mentioning of democracy in loose knit fashion, one of the things that Sessions had said that had driven me absolutely mad during this
Don't tell me he used the
was
word democracy in his testimony.
oh yeah, our democratic process. Our democratic process. Yes, Sessions said that he's protecting our democratic process. Sessions, you're an attorney. Think about it for a moment. We are not a democracy. Democracy is mob rule. Democracy is a terrible thing. And I think it's funny. Aaron mentioned here as a sidetrack note is Dennis Rodman in North Korea for God knows what hours later. Aaron, he probably goes to North Korea for new hair dyes. I think that's how he gets those crazy rainbow farting unicorn colors because I can't think of anything else that would come up. And, it's almost like Dennis Rodman's hair color that is chosen magically is like the people that run out there and claim we're a democracy. It's gaudy, it's ugly, and it's not a true representation of what we are. And when we say that we're protecting our democratic process, the only process within our government that is quote unquote democratic is our elections. Other than that, we are a republic. A republic recognizes the rights of all sovereign individuals, whereas a democracy only recognizes the rights of a majority. That means that they could run around willy-nilly and change things and impact certain groups just because, well, that's the will of the majority. That is why democracies always fail.
Yep.
The United States was never, and God willing, will never be a democracy. We can't afford it. It would tear us asunder as a nation and people. And that is something that, why would we want to do that to ourselves? Why would we want to open ourselves up for this sort of chicanery? Why would we want to become the Dennis Rodman of nations? I don't think that's a good idea.
No. What we would be named the United Worms of America at that point in time. Remember Dennis Rodman's nickname in the NBA, the Worm, when he was with the Detroit Bad Boys.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to digress into the NBA because that'll just send me off on a very, very bad tirade. Don't want to get into that right now. It wouldn't be prudent in this juncture, so to speak. But it's just, again, it's the political correctness, it's the revisionist history, it's the moral relativism and the indoctrination that we see running roughshod over everybody. Everywhere you turn, every single issue that ever comes up, it's it's there. We have to cut the head off of that hydra, and every time we cut off the head, we have to cauterize it so it doesn't grow back. And the only way to do that, again, the Constitution is the key. You want to take words like democracy, throw them around like you're Rosie O'Donnell on, playing some kind of donut chase down a steep hill in San Francisco. And sorry about the visual, but still, you can't just do that. It is not healthy. Bad things can happen. Bad things. You're talking severe collateral damage. And people don't understand when you take words and you twist them around and give them a different context in order to fit your agenda. First of all, Goebbels would be so very proud of you, as would Himmler. They would come up with some kind of golden Nazi award to present to you if they were still alive. But
presenting now the golden swastikas.
There you go. Yeah, followed by the golden lightning bolts. But it's
rune.
Yeah. But to do it, you are creating a situation where there's going to be collateral damage. And a lot of people don't understand that collateral damage isn't just physical damage. You are damaging generations. You are damaging the posterity of this country, of which is strictly prohibited by the Constitution and your role. We, the people of the United States, do ordain and establish this Constitution to ourselves and our posterity. That means that it is our obligation to make sure that future generations are not collaterally damaged.
Well, and one of the ways that we prevent that type of collateral damage is we stay true to the Constitution. Now, we've all heard thrown around in the salivating mainstream media as of today, and certainly with this testimony that was going on, this notion of executive privilege. We know that executive privilege was abused by Richard Milhous Nixon. That's what gave the left the bone for that gift that keeps on giving of stupid Watergate. But what exactly is executive privilege? It gets thrown out there willy-nilly. Is it something that's found in the Constitution? Actually, no. It can be claimed by the president or members of the executive branch to withhold certain information from the courts and Congress, including information that has been subpoenaed. However, it is a hazy concept and not explicitly mandated or even mentioned in the U.S. Constitution. So again, remember when I said that corruption and all of the problems that we're facing within this modern arena of American politics is deeply rooted in this distancing and divorcing ourselves from the Constitution? It's this kind of thing that goes forth. Now, instantly, people are going to run and say, but the Supreme Court has ruled that communications that take place within a president's administration are protected under a presumptive privilege, which is fundamental to the operation of government and inextricably rooted in the separation of powers under the Constitution. Again, this is another penumbras thing. Either we go by the Constitution and not attempt to read in new interpretations to it, which is strictly prohibited by the 9th Amendment to the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to our shared United States Constitution, or else we run the risk of creating these quote-unquote penumbras or shadows.
But
basically, we're pulling a rabbit out of our posterior is what that comes down to. And we've got to stop doing this, because if we're going to have that kind of blanket statement, this is where the lack of transparency comes from. Yes, did Obama hide behind this crap? Absolutely. It was wrong when he did it. It was wrong when Nixon did it. I think we have to get back to accountability. If it's a threat to national security, okay. Otherwise, it just doesn't pass muster with me.
Well, certain things that are discussed with, amongst the president and his, cabinet members and whatnot, I can understand certain things being classified, certain things that are not made to be privy to the American people because of national security measures. I get that.
Mm.
I'm fully supportive of that. But when you have things going on, kind of play a role in certain investigations that could be questionable, and then you want to say, oh, well, no, that's classified. Well, I can't talk about that because of this. Or I can't. No. That doesn't work. That's not the way it works. See, you can't dictate what can and cannot be talked about because it may be a hindrance to you or a hindrance to somebody else, which makes me believe that when Sessions said that,
Hmm.
is he trying to preserve his own job by
Right.
trying to possibly cover something up? Who knows? Again,
Right.
it's speculation, but eventually it will all come out in the wash.
Hmm.
Now, here's the thing, Randy, with regarding everything you said prior, uh, Trump would disagree with you because he would say that all of those things are actually in the Constitution under Article 12, which he's a big supporter of. Remember? He mentioned he's a big
Yes.
supporter of Article 12 back during the campaign.
Which is so
Now,
funny because there are 11
yeah,
articles in the Constitution, but
seven articles. Yeah.
7. But
Yeah. I mean,
I'm
we can go
having the
8,
ones
9,
of
10, and 11.
dissolution and bovine excrement.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and the right to health care, which Article 10 with
right,
the lowest caps, and
11.
Again, the thing is,
We can find them in the 57 states of Obama.
right. And maybe, hey, if we just, allow Guam to tip over, maybe it's on the underbelly of that. Who knows?
Sure. But, I want to jump
But
on something here real
it's
quick. Executive privilege is actually not that new of an idea. We know that it was actually first attempted to be invoked by George Washington. Of course, it wasn't called that. But it was back in 1792 when he was unwilling to hand over information regarding a failed expedition that he had launched against one of the hostile Indian tribes. But get this, he had to turn it over eventually. And it's interesting. The term executive privilege didn't actually come into existence until Dwight Eisenhower.
Hmm.
But it has been used by Washington, Jefferson,
Lincoln.
Tricky Dick Nixon, Slick Willie Billy Bob Clinton, Jorge W., and Barack Obama. But the problem that comes up with it is when it is ill-defined and when it is court-defined, that is essentially an activist court. We always talk about how we hate activist courts and that we don't want activist judges. But when we go forth and create law out of thin air through judicial fiat, that is actually a violation of the separations of power. Why do we not
Article 3
discuss the
specifically.
violations of the separation of powers when it comes to the court grabbing power for itself, but we do when we want to invoke some sort of mythical privilege that isn't found in the Constitution? You see, maybe I'm being a stickler here. Maybe I'm, just being a curmudgeon again about all of this, but I want to go back to the way the Constitution was composed. That is why we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, coined the term constitutional compositionist. It means that we want to go back to the way that the Constitution was composed, because when we don't, when we ignore that, that's when we run into this great litany of other bovine excrement and 12 articles in a 7-article document. It's just insanity, really.
Yeah, there has to come to a point to where everything's going to break. And there's only going to be two sides. There's going to be the side to where people are going to stand up for the conservation and preservation of their rights and their authorities as the ultimate wielders of sovereigns. Or they're going to stand on the side of taking a knee, bowing down, and then lining up to get a bullet in the back of the head. History shows as much. History dictates that to happen. Now, when in the course of history will it take place? That's up for us to decide. We have to be the makers of that history. Now, Randy and I are not believers in coincidence.
No.
Everything happens for a reason, okay? Everything is already preordained. It's out of our control in the grand scheme of things. But we do have something that's called free will. And it is up for us to decide. We have been granted, endowed with our rights. Therefore, our rights become our authority. And when we utilize our authority, when we negate our authority, we negate our rights, and we have nothing. I've said it numerous times. Randy has reiterated, without our rights, we are left with nothing. And if we're left with nothing, who do we really have to blame for that? Do we blame the politicians? No. We blame ourselves. We can't blame the people that we elect. We can't blame the people that would eventually become tyrants to rule over us. Can't blame them. You know, that's kind of like, you know, your dog biting you and you going and shooting your neighbor's cat. It's pointless. It doesn't make any sense.
Fluffy, it's your fault.
Poor Fluffy. We knew him so well. But the point comes down to it that, you know, and I snicker and laugh at this, but in a way I do that to preserve my own sanity. Because I'm seeing nothing but insanity. Nothing but insanity. People are doing the very clinical definition of insanity. They're doing the same things over and over again, expecting a different result. They're putting the same people in office, different names, same people, different names in office. Well, this person just said they're going to do this. It hasn't happened. Oh, Trump's going to build the wall. Where is it? Oh, he's going to get rid of this. He's going to kick ISIS ass, don't you know? Really?
Jehoser.
Look at me in my fishing lure shirt. Yeah.
Oh my God, what the hell was that?
I don't know. It was like, you know, one of those little. You remember the show Gremlins? Yeah. Don't feed them after midnight. Don't get them wet. Well, it's like someone took a bag full of sequins, gave it a bucket of chicken, and doused it in a pool of water. It's just hideous. But it comes down to, again, we cannot blame anybody. Again, you point the finger at somebody else, you got three more pointing back at you. What are you willing to do to make things right? I know what I'm willing to do. I know what Randy's willing to do. I could venture a guess as to say I would know what Aaron and Donna are willing to do, and our other listeners.
Right. You know, speaking of Aaron, he brings up a good point here. He says the Iranian Guard in Mexico, and the president is talking about ISIS and drug lords being taken down when Iran is teaming up with drug lords. Leaks. Yeah, they're leaks. Because we have these feckless politicians on either side that are going out there and trying to undermine the credibility of the United States. And it's not just that they are undermining the credibility of the United States. It's they're thumbing the nose at the American people. They don't care about our safety. Otherwise, this whole torrent of illegal aliens issue would have been dealt with. We wouldn't be bringing in more so-called refugees. In fact, I saw something earlier today that said that Trump is going to continue greenlighting an Obama plan to allow Iranian refugees into this country now, which, boy, does that sound like a brilliant idea when they're sitting there teaming up with the drug lords. I mean, Sessions even mentioned in his opening statement today how the deaths from overdoses have increased exponentially and that the murder rate has increased exponentially, and then we're going to go and keep doing this. You see, when the federal government runs around like a rabid fox with Tourette's, that's a problem because it means that we're going to be chasing our tails and poisoning ourselves at the same time.
Mhm.
And that's really not a wise course of conduct. It's not something that is going to bring this nation back to the path to prosperity. And isn't that what we should be focused on as a nation and people right now? Shouldn't we be wanting to be a strong and robust nation? And I think part of the reason that we're not anymore, I know that I've brought this up time and again on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, but it's so on point that it bears repeating again here. It's remember what Sam Adams said that we needed to be in order to be a strong, vibrant, and even robust republic. We have to be a virtuous people. But where is the virtue? When we allow our government to run around leaking like the Titanic on a third Sunday after it sank, and when we allow the media to spin false narratives, and when we ignore all that is around us, but particularly our Constitution, that is a recipe for disaster. That's why we're in a weakened state. That's why the United States is facing moral and societal and political blight. It's because these politicians think that they are God's gift to the world when they're really nothing more than a third-rate copy of scum. And that's unfortunate.
Don't be so insulted to scum, please.
I know. Scum still has some value
Yeah.
and use.
Yeah. You know, it comes down to I want to give credit where credit is due. I really do. I don't want this administration to fail, because if this administration fails, then we as a people fail. We as a republic fails. Anytime we have an administration that is full of debauchery, idioms, and idiots that just continue to shovel, the excrement aside or in front of everybody, expecting everybody to trudge through it in order, we have to do this because we can make America great again. Really? Really? So, Aaron brings up another point of, the wall as part of the Secretary of Defense. Okay, yeah. If he needs infrastructure, it's in his right to build a wall. Okay, that's fine. See, I don't have an issue with the wall being built at all. I don't. I really don't. If it's something that needs to be done in order for our security of our country to be done, then fine. But here's the thing. If you're going to do it, do it. Don't say you're going to do it and say you're going to give a timeline on when you're going to start to do it or even begin to do it, and then fall way short. Just do it. Just do it. Don't run your mouth. Put your money where your mouth is.
Well, and the other thing that comes down to it is when you're going to build the wall, don't sit there and say that the dream kids that we have now should be allowed to continue to thumb their nose at our law. Don't sit there and say it's too harsh to deport those that broke the law. If we selectively enforce the law, and don't get me wrong, we've been doing that for far too long, then that whole adage of the United States being a nation of laws and not of men, it begins to lose all of its applicability. It begins to lose all of its thunder. What good is that? How does that benefit us? Well, the fact of the matter is it doesn't benefit us. The fact of the matter is it places us in a precarious position. It places us in a weakened position. And for the love of God, why do we want to embrace weakness? Why do we want to be done that way? And Aaron brings up another point: 5 orphanages on the border now. This was not asked for, but just built. Well, see, Aaron, that's part of the thing. This is part of the subterfuge that they do. Oh, well, it's compassion. It's compassion. No, it's not.
You know,
These
who else
orphans
used?
are here illegally. Let them be in orphanages in their own damn country. That's not hateful. That's me respecting the sovereignty of Mexico. Why don't they put it that way? Why do we not know how to actually control the narrative with this crap?
Well, and again, it's a false narrative that's being put out. Who else in history? Again, folks, you'll be surprised by the answer with this. But who else in history used children as political footballs?
Uncle Adolf.
Uncle Adolf. Bueller. No, it's Adolf Hitler.
Uncle Adolf's home for wayward children
Yeah.
and SS officers. Yeah?
Yeah. Again, it's a narrative, yes, but it's a false narrative. And this is another great point, proving exactly what I said earlier. Anytime there's any modicum of credibility that can be established or looks like it's going to be established and take hold, it gets completely wiped out and destroyed by subterfuge and false narratives. So, how are we to trust individuals to govern us or to lead us if they're going to continue to do these things? Furthermore, how can we trust our own countrymen who will continually defend these people, defend the actions of these individuals, because they put them up on some kind of golden quaff pedestal, like the Israelites did at the bottom of Mount Sinai when they built the golden quaff and bowed down and worshipped it? Exactly what they're doing. Randy, remember I made that analogy between Moses and the Israelites and the Trump supporters back before he even got secured the nomination.
Oh, I know.
And it's just it's it was prophetic. It really was. Because it's being shown more and more today that no matter what Trump does, good, bad, or indifferent, people will always defend him in the way that they want to see him. They will use projection or attack him
unjustly.
Yeah.
And you see, that's the thing. What we see is we have entered into a world of exact and polar opposites, where there is no middle ground, where there is no sanity, where we're not standing up for things that matter and for the rule of law. Instead, it's all about personality. Well, Trump combed his hair over this way today, and Chuck the Schmuck Schumer ate a booger burger at this time. Look, the litmus test that matters, and what we should be focusing on, is where is the Constitution being violated? How do we end the incessant, the continuous, the repetitive violation of the supreme law of the land? If we are truly a nation of laws and not of men, then by God, we need to get back to strict adherence to it. And I'm sick and tired of the Republican Party not doing that. The Republican Party sitting there saying we need $1 trillion in infrastructure spending over the next 10 years. How are you going to fund it? Or, little orphan Jose Puebla de la Tega de Yum Yum Burrito there on the border at one of Los Cinco's orphanages at La Quinta. That crap needs to stop too, because we've got to get back to the Constitution. That crap is not in the Constitution. That is a misappropriation of funds. Where in the hell is Congress? It's their duty to make sure that it's not misappropriated. They have the power of the purse.
I believe that would be Article 1, Section 7, if I'm not mistaken.
You're not mistaken. That's
Ah,
exactly where you find it in the
yeah.
confines of the
Hmm,
Constitution.
interesting.
Why are they being derelict?
That's a good question. And I think we've touched on numerous plausible and just answers. I guess that is a multiple choice question. It really is. Why are they being derelict? Well, they don't want their tea times and crumpets interrupted. They want nothing but a continuous reign of unadulterated power, fat pockets, elitism. We can go on and on and on. Yeah, one scoop or two scoops. Yeah, well, these people. You offer one scoop or two scoops, they'll just give me the whole damn bucket. That's just how they are. I saw this meme that I think you put it up, Randy,
Oh,
on your
God.
Facebook page, or you shared it, uh,
Frightening.
about Bernie Sanders. You know, well, if you have $1 and I have $1 and you have $20, that means that I have $21 and you have nothing. That's
And
what it
now you have
is.
welfare. You now
Yeah,
have
yeah.
welfare.
You have welfare. So it's no, you have socialism. Pure, unadulterated socialism. Yeah, this is the kind of socialism that Adolf Hitler,
This is
Uncle
why I'm the
Adolf.
flying
Yeah,
saucer. The flying saucer. Don't question it. I like Thunderbird liquor.
Adolf. I knew Adolf Hitler. Him and I, we played Raggedy Andy together, and and one time, he had more Raggedy Andys than me, and he gave me a lesson in socialism, and I learned it really well. Shut up. Just shut up. Okay? When people like that are allowed to dictate and make legislation and throw their hats in the ring in order to have some kind of delegated authority upon election,
Well,
what
what's
the hell
really
is wrong with people?
what's really disturbing about it is that this guy almost got it. This guy almost
Yeah,
was the
that's
DNC nominee. I mean, you had the choice between a lying, corrupt scarecrow and a pickled socialist hippie from
I was
frickin' Vermont.
I
I
was
mean,
hoping
how
you
do
were
we
going to keep it
rectify
family
that?
friendly.
How can we go forth and not be embarrassed by this as a nation and people? Because it literally is embarrassing. So we have basically a used car salesman slash real estate agent slash hair product salesman and steak peddler on the Republican side. And we have a lunatic socialist and the spawn of Satan's sister's cousin, twice removed, whose facelift rejected her about 2 seconds after her brain finally gave up. And this is what we have to choose from? Really?
No wonder France laughs at us. Folks,
France.
France is laughing at us.
Well, France is a bunch of socialist pepe. Ah, ha, ha. They should go eat their croissants there in Paris and enjoy opening the floodgates to even more terrorists. You see, folks,
Bothers me that they laugh at
when
us.
when we ignore what matters and what keeps us safe and what has propelled us to such lofty heights in the course of our relatively brief yet illustrious history here on the face of God's green earth, this is the type of madness that's going through pedogate. Aaron says, I gotta say, reports are coming in that a crackdown is active. Over 1,500 pedophiles arrested since Trump election. History being made. Pedogate. That is a good name, Aaron.
Yeah.
Was Pedo Bear one of the ones that was arrested? That's certainly a question that will need to be answered. Folks, I know it seems as though we may be overly harsh on the government here when we do this and when we talk about this. But the reason that we bring these questions up is I think it's important that we have the civil discourse that we've had, like we've had on this evening's program. It's important that we be able to discuss it. I mean, we make no bones about it. We're not wonderful friends of Trump, we're not fans of him. If you want deaf fans of Trump, go listen to Rush Limbaugh. Oh, I guess that was a bit mean. But
Alex Jones.
yeah, Alex Jones and the Fish People. That sounds like a bad band. When you stop and think of Alex Jones and the Fish People. They had them in tanks. I mean, okay. Folks, with this little bit of laughter at the end, it is time for us to begin our descent. As always, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I've been joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. Folks, you should really join in like Aaron and Donna do. It's a lot of fun. We enjoy it.
Yeah.
We may not agree on everything. If we disagree, point at the flight attendant. It's her fault, clearly.
Push her out of the plane.
She's always in the wrong, so push her out of the plane. Folks, if you haven't subscribed, we invite you to do so, because we really do welcome the participation. And we invite you to follow us on Twitter with the Twitter handle @RadioAviationEX. One more time, that's @RadioAviationEX. There you'll find the departure board that lists my Twitter account, Jeremy's Twitter account, the Blogspot account, and then, of course, the Cafe Press account. Jeremy, tell them just a little bit.
Well, I don't want to trample on any kind of executive privilege here or anything, so I'll just go ahead and say that everything on the Cafe Press account, folks, it was intended to be pre-written. Kind of like Sessions' testimony today, but this is actually legitimate. So,
in size 28 font. I mean, you could see it.
It's there. Trust us, it's there.
Sessions, just wear your glasses. Don't make it that obvious. You want to talk about a leak? People are getting that off of the cameras. No, we haven't forgotten Hannity, Donna.
No. Just
Hannity's out there trying to clean up the bird crap off of the runway.
Yeah,
we'll run over him when we land, we promise.
Yeah. But with the Cafe Press account, shot glasses, of course, I always have to mention shot glasses. Just one of those things. But a whole lot of other novelties. And folks, I'm going to tell you right now, none of our stuff is French. Nothing is French.
That.
Yes. So, hey, if it has a very distinct odor, just remember it is an all-American odor, which is a righteous odor.
Fromage.
Yeah. So, take a look at it. Show your support for us, but mostly show your support for yourselves and your friends and family and other true ultimate wielders of sovereignty.
And Aaron and Donna, once again, we want to give a special thanks to you, our first-class passengers. We really do appreciate it. We hope to see you again next time. Please do